This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the special town council meeting, the third in the series of budget workshops for Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. I'm going to start with an announcement. I do see a great variety of new names on the screen. So for those new to the experience, members of the public, please keep all your microphones muted during the meeting unless you're the person asking a question. Also, kindly keep your camera inactive unless you're speaking. This system does not deal well with multiple simultaneous speakers. The audio from only one person will come through at a time. Therefore, please only speak if you have been recognized and allow others to speak, answer questions. Don't talk over each other. Thank you. I don't have a gavel. I do have a mute all button. If you're not being nice to each other, I'm going to use that. So be nice. I'll now proceed to go through the agenda. If you wish to question or comment regarding a particular agenda item, please type in the chat bar that you do. The agenda is the departments. I'm going to read off the list of departments before we get into the agenda. I'm going to ask you not to type in super early because there's a good chance I'll forget about your question. The chat bar gets filled up pretty easily. So please let me know that you have a question for a department when I've called that department. If you look at the top corner of your screen, I think it's the top right corner, click on that chat bubble, type into the strip, and I will see your request to speak. I will first look for questions from those who are using a computer or a tablet or a smartphone app to participate. Once I've heard from all those who are logged in digitally, I'll see comments from those who have dialed in the Ma Bell way. If you intend to comment or question, you must introduce yourself by stating your name and address for the record. And there's a lot of small departments. So again, just don't forget to identify yourself before you speak. With that, please rise for a moment of silence. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Fishbein. Laughlin.
Here.
Marone.
Here.
Morgenstein.
Here.
Shortell.
Here.
Tata.
Here.
Testa. Zandri.
Here.
And Chairman Cervoni.
Here. All right, the departments we are going through tonight are as follows. Library, Economic Development Commission. We are skipping the Veteran Center. Registrar of Voters, Wallingford Center, Inc. Wallingford Center, Inc. Capitol Facade. Senior Center, Historic Program Match, Center Street Cemetery, Public Celebrations, Columbus House, SCOW, or the Spanish Community of Wallingford, and Wallingford 2021. With that, I see several logged in representing the library. If you'd just like to let me know which of you would like to speak.
Hi, I'm Jane Fisher, the library director. Would you like me to put my camera on?
If you are comfortable, we'd love to.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm here representing the Wallingford Public Library, and I want to acknowledge that also this evening, our board chair, Carol Mikulski, is here, our treasurer, Beth Brooks, Bob Carmody, a member of our budget committee, and our assistant director, Julie Rio, are here as well. I have some prepared comments. Is there time for that? Not too long, and then take your questions?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I wanted to thank the council for the support over the past year. It's been a challenging time, as I'm sure you know. But I've really appreciated that several of you have reached out with kind words and support to myself and the staff as we've worked through the pandemic. And I want to acknowledge our board of managers as well, which has been really steadfast in its support of the library and our community. So when we realized about a year ago that the pandemic was going to last longer than we first anticipated, we did make the very difficult decision to lay off most of our part-time workers. It was very painful. I would say a low point in my career. The staff who remained at work created our park and pickup program. They offered very creative virtual programs, provided reference and information services by phone, email, and text. We were among the first public libraries to reopen our building to the public last July, and we do continue to offer more hours of service in our building than many libraries do. We are open for browsing and borrowing, for copies and fax, tax forms, reference assistant, and computer appointments. Our virtual programs have been a big hit, and we'll continue to offer them through the fall. But we also recognize that our community is really seeking opportunities to come together when we can do so safely. So we've decided to move forward with in-person outdoor summer programs, and we've arranged to rent a tent, which will be in the parking lot of the library from July through mid-August for summer programs. So we're really excited about being able to offer some in-person summer programs this year. It's been challenging, I would say, to balance the need to keep our building open as much as possible and to keep the public safe at the same time. But I think we've done an excellent job managing this. As far as we know, there were no cases of COVID-19 that originated from the library. And currently about 2/3 of our staff is fully vaccinated. The remaining third is on its way, and we expect to add more hours and services and return our seating over the summer months as our staff becomes fully vaccinated. Happy to answer any questions about the proposed budget that I've sent for your review. Our board and I always strive to deliver the best value for the dollar of support that you give to the library. We never pad the budget. We have increased the percent that we distribute from our investment account as a way to keep our ask from the town's taxpayers as lean as possible. This year, we're seeking a 0.76% increase in support from the town, and we hope that that modest increase is acceptable, especially given the fact that our budget allocation from the town was held flat in the current fiscal year. And I sent over quite a bit of detail and happy to answer any specific questions that you have about the library's budget.
Thank you. With that, first up, questions from the council. We'll give it a minute. The chat bar is stark white empty. Moving along, questions from the public for the library. We'll give that a minute. And anyone on the telephone with questions for the library? Well, Ms. Fisher, you get the rest of the night off, at least from us anyway. Thank you for your time. Thank you to all of you who volunteer and serve on the library board in your various capacities. You do important work for the town. Thank you. Next up is the Economic Development Commission.
Good evening.
Good
Joe
evening, Mr.
Mira.
Mira.
How are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you? You
Terrific.
might want to identify yourself for the record, even though I know who you are.
Okay. I'm Joe Mira, Chairman of the Economic Development Commission. With us this evening is Tim Ryan and Mark Gingrich. We're submitting our operating budget request, which is a level funded budget. Also a capital expenditure request for $5,000, which was unused for the bulletin boards last year. We're resubmitting it for this year's budget. We do have, we're open for any questions you might have, but we do have a brief presentation as far as the promotion expenses. And if I could turn to Mark for that, Chairman of our Marketing Committee.
Thank you, Joe. The marketing committee and the marketing part of the budget is a fairly hefty part of the budget, although it's not a terribly large budget, but it's a bigger part of that budget. We embarked on an avenue of promoting the town by going to Quinnipiac University at the beginning of the school year now, 6 or 7 months ago. And we secured 7 students and a professor, Tomchik, who helped us set up a marketing program for the town. And we've been working on that ever since, we think quite successfully, although we haven't seen the measurements that we want. That's the next thing we're going to start looking at now, is how do we measure the successes that we expect to be getting. But the mayor has been very good in supporting us on this, and we have been very active in setting ourselves up on Instagram, LinkedIn. We have a college recruitment program, email marketing program, and through all of this, we've been finding different ways of promoting the town. So in the next couple of weeks, I know it's been asked of Chairman Schiavone that if we can come in front of the council, would make a more formal presentation to show where we've been, where we're going, what we want to do. But that's basically what we've been doing for the marketing of the town. We did not do any of the boards this year because of the pandemic and messaging, and we just said, let's just lay low on that. But we think we want to continue with those boards since they don't cost us a heck of a lot of money, just for maintenance more than anything else. So that's basically my presentation on the marketing end of it.
Thank you. How about you, Mr. Ryan? You got anything for us?
Nothing to add at this point. I think the presentations were well done, so I'm here to answer any questions I may help answer.
Sure. I haven't yet seen your request to come before me, the council. So I'm hoping it can wait until the meeting at the end of May, if that timing is appropriate.
Yes, we had actually put the request with Joan Stave, and it is for the second meeting in May. So we do have it on our calendar for May 25th in hopes that we can get on your calendar. And as Mark Gingrich had mentioned, that would be a presentation by our student marketing team from Quinnipiac University, which has built out our entire digital marketing platform for us. And I think you'll be very impressed with their work and our collective work. So we're looking forward to giving them the opportunity. There'll be 2 presenters, although there's 7 members on the team. There'll be 2 presenters because it just becomes a little bit unwieldy to do with more than that. But all 7 will, you'll see the product of all 7 students' work, and we're relatively confident you'll be impressed. So we look forward to doing that. And we hope that May date is going to work. It works for us. It works for you.
Yep. Well, for those who watch a lot of reality television, this portion of the meeting was not staged. We had not had a conversation about the May 25th meeting. So it's just a happy coincidence. First question is from Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ryan, I had emailed you this question in advance, but I'll just read it aloud for everyone's benefit. I asked if Mr. Ryan would please explain the $49,744 for consulting engineer. This is actually on page 89 of the budget, so it's under fund balance committed economic development.
Right, happy to do so. And thank you very much, Councilor Tata, for sending me that in advance. So outside of the operating budget that has been addressed thus far, there is a separate capital project number, what Councilor Tata is referring to. That is money that we worked in conjunction with engineering at the time. Rob Boltermitis, our town engineer. It's been in the budget for, I'm going to say 3, maybe even 4 years now. And it has to do with the property, but unlocking potential in the property that's behind what right now is the Hilton Garden Inn on Route 68. You may recall, I'm sure you all recall when that Hilton Garden Inn was a deserted concrete bunker for quite a few years. And in order to get that project moving and developed, there was the state DOT, or now referred to as OSTA, Office of State Traffic Authority, that had insisted that road improvements be done on 68, i.e. new signaling, road widening, to the tune of about $1.2 million on any developments that would happen on the south side of 68. And this is again prior to the Hilton Garden Inn, which, with a $1.2 million price tag hanging around the neck of any project, it basically became the white elephant that would prevent anything from happening. So the town worked with the developer and the state DOT and asked that they not insist on doing the road improvements because it thwarts development. So what the DOT agreed to do is allow the Hilton Garden Inn to put in 99 parking spaces. And what triggers the road improvements is the 100th parking spot. So to this day, the Hilton Garden Inn has 99 parking spaces. So what we wanted to do is say, albeit the 50 acres that is behind the Hilton Garden Inn is privately owned, and that we should not be using taxpayer money to necessarily benefit and move the agenda of a private property owners, it would be in the best interest of the town if we could potentially unlock the potential that we believe resides back there. And how do you do that? Well, we did it in North Plains Industrial Park by building out the infrastructure. We did it in Barnes Park North. We did it in Barnes Park South. We did it in Research Parkway. And our vision was to take and have someone study the feasibility of us potentially putting a roadway in from Route 68, stubbing utilities up to the property lines of what is known as the Ringrose Gillespie sites, to see if that would potentially lower the cost of an overall project and make a project feasible. Now, without sounding overly patronizing, we say all the time we spend town monies like it's our money. And along that road, there's been a couple of changes, i.e. Bristol-Myers announced that they'd be leaving the area. Well, that's a major traffic change. So rather than spend the $50,000 on the study, Rob Boltermitis and I said, let's put it on hold. All right, so we got to the point where a couple of years ago, we put an RFP out. We felt we were ready to go. And you may recall that there was another hotelier that had proposed a hotel at that exit ramp where that red house is, that kind of, dilapidated red house. And that project was approved. So we then again said, well, let's not spend the taxpayer money because this hotelier perhaps has to engage this issue themselves. So, and that hotel project was approved, but obviously that hotel was never built and there's still time ticking. So sorry for the long answer, but it needed a little detail. What we have there is money earmarked that has no impact on the budget whatsoever at this point because it was budgeted, several years back. And it is in abeyance right now. That gives us the opportunity, if we see on a go forward basis, to potentially unlock the opportunity on those sites. So Counselor Tad, I hope that answered your question, and my apologies for being so long-winded, but I didn't want to leave any details out.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, Counselor Morgenstein.
My question was pretty simple. We keep talking, you keep a couple people mentioning boards. Are we talking about billboards that you're not moving forward with? Two people have used the term boards.
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
We have several billboards, I-91 North,
Yeah.
I-91 South. We have one on the Merritt Parkway over near the Sonic area, you know, near where the old Yale Motor Inn was. We have a board that's over on Merritt Parkway or Wilbercross Parkway South, over near the Oakdale. Different messages on them. Some of them about power. Some of them is Wallingford works for you. Some of the messages are we're centrally located, and this is the place you should be if you want to establish a business because of that particular reason.
Right, okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Those boards, yeah,
because-
those boards don't cost us
Billboard.
any money. In other words, we don't rent the boards. The boards we had put up years ago, the only is the maintenance of the boards and changing the messaging. And that's why we have it within the budget to do that.
Right. And so jumping off of Counselor Tata's question, if we wanted to, if we needed to come up with the amount of money that you're holding on to for the consulting engineer, I don't see Mr. Bose here. I understand he's no longer with us. Can we, not to penalize you guys, but if we wanted to, is that money at all movable, or is that something that it was given to the EDC and it needs to stay there even though they're not looking to use it this year? Is there anyone here that can answer that?
I can answer that. Jim Bowles, Comptroller.
Thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Not quite gone. Almost,
Thank you.
but not quite.
For that. Thank you.
Yeah, those monies are, as one of the gentlemen from EDC has said, budgeted in a prior year. So the council, nobody from the council or the administration could use it for any other purpose. The only thing that could happen if the council did not approve that, in that, as Councilor Tata mentioned, page 89, if you had let's say an objection to it or something like that, we would cancel it out, and it would become part of what we call the unassigned fund balance. Because what that page 89 really is a designation of portion of our fund balance for those items that move forward. We call them carry forwards. Really not a correct term, but it's an easy term to remember. So in short, no, we couldn't use it for anything other than that, if for anything at all.
Okay.
that
Yeah.
help?
Yeah, and I suspected that was the answer. I just wanted to be sure that that was clear. Thank you, Mr. Bose. I'm sorry to see you'll be leaving us. Thank you. I'm
Thank
all
you.
set.
Thank you on both points. Thank you.
Next up, Counselor Shortell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the cover letter to the budget, there's a reference to funds from the American Rescue Plan. About $4.3 million would come to general government, and there's a reference to different ways this could be used that it wasn't determined, but one thing that was called out was for the EDC to develop an application process for this. Is this something that you've started? Or can you give an update on that, or is it too soon because we don't have the money yet? I'm just curious about that whole thing and how it's going to work.
Great question. So the mayor and I did meet once we realized that we were going to get American Rescue funds, sent to the town. The money is not here yet. It will be distributed over a 2-year period. But I'll read from the document. That money can be used. I say can be, doesn't necessarily have to be, but can be used to offset negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, to small businesses, to nonprofits, or aid impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. So the majority of that falls into, the business lines that Economic Development Office deals with all the time. So the question becomes, when that money finally arrives, how do we determine how it's disseminated? Is there an application process? There's got to be some criteria for determining eligibility. So what we have done is on our economic development listserv, which for the most part includes economic development from all over the state of Connecticut, I had sent out a message, again, communicating clearly with the mayor about just trying to get a feel for how our community of economic developers will be handling this money when it flows towards or into the town coffers. So the bottom line is nothing has been determined yet. We think there's going to be more direction that'll come from OPM. We think there's more direction that'll come along with the money itself. But we have our antenna up and we are ready and prepared to make sure that we approach this on somewhat of a, not a co-joined basis with other communities, but a similar basis, because we certainly don't want to see something happen where, well, Wallingford gave it out this way, but how come I can't get it this way in Meriden, or vice versa? There needs to be some coordination. So to answer your question, Councilor Shortell, we are all over it, and we will be prepared when the time comes.
Thank you. We look forward to more on that. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
I don't see any more questions from the council. Are there any questions from the public for the Economic Development Commission? And how about anybody on the telephone?
Mr. Chairman, Ed Bradley, Two Hampton Trail.
Go ahead, Mr. Bradley.
I have just a couple of questions. The first couple are for the mayor. Councilman Shortell kind of covered the American Rescue Plan and what the process would be. But I'm curious, in the mayor's third paragraph of his April 1 budget memo, he references we have requested the EDC. I'm curious who we is.
Yes, Mr. Bradley, the "we" is the collective term for the administrative offices of the town of Wallingford.
Okay. And the Don Rowe is, he's retired, over 4 years ago. And he was head of the economic, he was the economic development coordinator. Has that position been filled? And normally, if Don was still here, wouldn't he be handling the American Rescue Plan as far as the grants and et cetera?
Well, that office, for Economic Development Commission purposes, we have staffed that with Mr. Ryan. In addition, the commission itself is an excellent group, very organized and capable, and they are the ones who will be overseeing the organization, the application process, and distribution of any money that we might receive from the federal government. So we have a good team of people who are in the process, as was just reported, of determining what the process will be. We are awaiting more detailed guidelines from the U.S. Department of Treasury. What has been shared thus far is almost word for word what I put in my letter. We are promised that additional guidelines will be received, and when they're received, we will refer to them and implement them in the most efficient and logical way we can.
Okay, but going back to my original question, has Don Rowe's position been filled? And normally, wouldn't this process be handled in that department?
Well, no, we have not filled a full-time position that Mr. Rowe held. However, the department is involved with it, and that is out of Program Planning Office. That is the department out of which the Economic Development Commission operates.
Okay. Connecticut General Statute 7-136, Section B, is pretty specific on the duties of the EDC. And in my opinion, the EDC, again, it's my opinion, the EDC is really not the correct agency to head this process. But with that said, I have one more question, and that involves, I'm curious, on regular salaries and wages of $78,157. What is that?
Would you like me to take that question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Okay, so the 78,157 is compensation for myself and a yet to be hired part-time position in the Economic Development Office that will now be our digital media and marketing specialist. This is the position that was approved in last year's budget. And the budget that was proposed last year was just $435 off of that 78,157. So it's just been adjusted because over the last year, there's been 2% pay increases or whatever it was. So that position was approved last year. And of course, COVID hit, the uncertainty of COVID, a lot of scrambling in this office. We went from promoting the town to triaging with businesses on a daily basis. And it was my suggestion to the mayor that although that position had been approved to be hired in July 1 of 2020, that we not hire that position because things were in such disarray in the business community. It just was not the time to be out actively marketing and saying, grow your business here, relocate your business here, when people are hanging on by a shoestring in many cases. So that uncertainty had us go back to the budget before it was approved by the town council and say that we could take and extract the part-time salary or the hourly rate, the part-time hourly rate from that position for 4 months of 2020, which brought it down to that 65,722. So, which was the number that was finally approved. But the 78,157 is in fact within a couple of $100 of what was in the process of being approved last year, had we not reconsidered and retrenched due to COVID. Does that answer your question, Mr. Bradley?
I still have a question. You did mention that a portion of that is for you. Did I hear correct?
That is correct. So that salary and wages line is myself and the part-time person that I hope that you'll see advertised within the next week or so.
Your position is appointed by the mayor, correct?
I'm hired by the mayor, yes. And the commission.
I thought the commission, according to state statute, was an unsalaried position.
I'm not a commissioner. I'm a hired staff member.
Oh, you're hired. Okay, I did not realize that.
Yes.
Okay, and I think that's the end of my questions, Mr. Chairman. I thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Morgenstein.
Yes, thank you. And I want to thank Mr. Bradley. I believe I'm correct that he is a former counselor. Is that correct? Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Bradley.
Yes, that's correct. I'm a former counselor and former vice chairman.
Thank you. I thought I recognized the name, and I thank you, sir, for speaking up. Yeah, and it allowed me to think a bit about something that's been on my mind that, and I think I've said this in other capacities. I don't want to offend anyone in their current position, and I know that certainly the money that's going to be coming from the federal money cannot be used for full-time positions, but in the program planning office, a full-time grant writer who is not doing another job and is simply a full-time grant writer going out looking for money will pay their salary and benefits manyfold. And while we're always looking to do our lean budget and not add expenses, really should be something that we should be considering. And in the EDC, again, everyone doing a whole lot of work, but most of it voluntary, and that's great. But as we're coming out of this pandemic and we're looking to promote and bring back, you know, we have many more empty spaces. Investing in our future is what these monies are meant to do, and looking at the way we're structuring EDC, the program planning, going after grants is something that I would like to be looking into. Thank you.
Deborah's descendants, she was sent.
Thank you. I think that's all we have for the EDC. Thank you all for all of your work, both paid staff and volunteer commission members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, on to the registrar of voters. I think that I see both Joan Parisi and I thought I saw Bob Avery on earlier.
Yep,
There he is.
I'm here.
Yep. All right.
I'm here.
Good evening to both of you.
Yes, we're here.
Do you have any introductory remarks, or should we just go to the questions?
You can go right to the questions as far as I'm concerned.
Right to the questions.
I'm glad you agree, because at the moment there are no questions. So I'm presuming if counselors had questions, they would have already told me. Any questions from members of the public? Give the chat bar a minute. And any questions for the registrar of voters from anybody on the telephone? All right. Thank you for your brief presentation to the registrars.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you. And next up is Wallingford Center, Inc. I do see the executive director, and I do see one or two other board members. Would you like to start with any introductory remarks or go right to questions?
Hi, I'm Kathy Lilly. I live on Southview Drive. I'm the executive director for Wallingford Center, Inc., the new Liz Landau, as I am known. So I have been in this position for 6 months. Prior to that, Liz Landau managed the first 6 months of this pandemic, and Wallingford Center, I think, has fared fairly well through this. Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. Liz Davis is also on. She is my board president, and I believe Joan Parisi, one of my board members, is also on today. So I just want to acknowledge that. Acknowledge them, sorry. So we, unfortunately, we had to cancel a number of our events, and we made up for those events with some new, different creative things to drive people into town over the past 12 months. And some of the things, Liz did a program with all of the restaurants in town collecting receipts. That was early on, trying to get people to go out in the restaurants. It was very successful. We had a holiday store for the first time that was successful as well. We started a Business of the Week program to recognize downtown businesses. We partnered with a number of town organizations on some creative holiday events that were done with all safety precautions taken because of the pandemic. And we worked with Public Celebrations and Parks and Recreation on those. We put out some additional holiday lights, more than we usually do. Moving on to Valentine's Day, we had 3 different promotions in the center of town with the restaurants and the merchants. And recently we had the first ever restaurant week with all of the restaurants in town participating. Well, 1/3 of them did participate in this for the first time. We're being asked already to do another one later this year, which is what towns typically do. They do one at 2 different times during the year, during slow business weeks for restaurants. Our board has also added a marketing subcommittee to look at updating our website, which hasn't been worked on in at least 10 years. It's in an old format. We need to start from scratch. We've added some social media. We hope to do some more. And we would like to work with economic development to make sure that the things the commission has done carries over to some of that stuff to our website and marketing as well. So on to the budget. We're here to answer any questions you might have.
First question for you is from Councilor Zandri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Kathy. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
The only real question I have about the budget is, I noticed that there was no funds requested for Celebrate, and I know that it was canceled ahead of, I'm presuming ahead of when you sat down with the mayor. I've gotten a number of questions from different people, even ahead of, the governor loosening up different things and all of that. I guess the general questions, because they've seen the other efforts with things like Restaurant Week, where you're bringing people together in different venues. The question that I'm getting is, why are we not, because it comes back to me as the council and or the budget, why are we not putting into the budget for Celebrate? Is that why it got canceled? And so I really want to ask, why didn't we ask for funding for Celebrate, and why did we cancel it so early in the year before we, might have otherwise known what was happening, going into the fall?
So that vote was done by my board on May 2nd. And I quickly had to change my budget to present the next day to the mayor because they voted to not do Celebrate as well as Restaurant Hop that night. It was a board decision. There actually was very little discussion. The primary thing that drove that vote to cancel was the fact that young children still have not been tested for how the vaccine is going to affect them. It is a family event and a lot of young children. And the thought was, or the concern was that they would not be vaccinated by the time Celebrate happens. And with the crowds that we get and people operating in small spaces, small 10 by 10 tents, that it just would not be, and it's a non-ticketed event. We can't control who's coming or how many, that it would not be wise to move forward with it, considering all of the planning that it takes. We didn't want all the nonprofits that participate to have to do all this planning and purchase all the food items and everything that they normally purchase, and then have half the people attend that normally attend. So those were the main reasons why the board voted to cancel it.
I gotta say, and I don't want to play too much Monday morning quarterback on this, but again, I get a lot of questions over it, and almost everything that you outlined as a decision factor can very easily be countered. And I don't want to get into a long discussion about it because this is probably not the place. I mean, the kids are back in school full time. None of them are vaccinated. They're not, whether they catch it or not, or there's an outdoor venue, there's sports events. I mean, I'm asking as a counselor for whether it's WCI or any of the recreation groups, any of the other groups in town that are putting together events to really try to think. And I don't want to suggest that WCI didn't think about it. So let me preface that too. I know it's not an easy decision to make and have to say, gee, we don't want to do something that's been historical. I mean, even like the 350th got pushed again. That's maybe a lot more orchestration too than a normal, Celebrate Wallingford thing. But in an effort to try to start getting things back to normal, we need stuff like this. We need organized events. We need to help the restaurants, and I'm sure you're totally aware. So I don't mean to come across as too preachy, but I want to say it by trying to emphasize that I'm very positive for it. If we can help with budgeting, with funding, with, whether it's, setting up things for allowing permission to use the parade ground for smaller type events. We want to be there for this because I think it's very important that we move as we can towards back towards getting back to normal with these types of events. So going forward, my ask would be, don't be shy about brainstorming and bringing something new to us that we can help with, because I think we want to see these events return. We definitely don't want to see them, to get to the point where they fall out of favor, get canceled, or they get thought about as an after effect. I want to see these different committees coming together to do this stuff. And this is the time to get the budgeting for it as we go through the season, but even as we plan into a future year. So I want to emphasize that we try to really think forward on this as opposed to reactive or defensive all the time. I think people, if they don't want to be at these events or they want to use a more limited schedule than they would normally do, they would do so. But when they're canceled, the option gets removed from everybody. And we've been operating the past, let's say 6 months, going into restaurants, maintaining our distances, wearing the masks, taking them off to eat, getting up from the table and moving away with them on, and so on and so forth. Going to school, hybrid, now full-time, people are going back to work. I want us to all think about that process going forward. So I'm sorry I kind of went a little bit off base, but it is kind of budget related in the fact that I think a lot of the different groups, recreation, different things have different groups have said, we don't need this funding because we're not going to do this. I'd like us to think of different ways we can do these things and to keep things in the budget so we can get them started, even if it's in March and April of next year, when it's still this budget that we end up getting approved, where that money would come from. So, thank you, Kathy, for letting me kind of divert a little bit onto my question. And I don't mean to put WCI on the spot or the focus, just that I wanted to get that answer because I want to be able to go back to the people and say, listen, it was a discussion. It was a group discussion. They thought about the different ramifications. They were erring on the side of caution, but they're trying to institute other things, and they've got some budget for stuff. And I kind of wanted to, make sure that I kind of delivered that message back too. So I appreciate you listening too.
But Ms. Lilly, I just want to clarify, you said your board voted on May 2nd. I think you meant March 2nd, right?
March, yes, I'm sorry. It was March 2nd. So Jason, I appreciate all of that. We do not disagree with anything that you said. We're all in agreement on that. You will see in our budget that there's a line there for other events at the bottom. That is because we are going to try to do little smaller events throughout the next, however long this goes. For instance, right now we're doing, all of these are first time things. Everything I said before were all first time things. So this weekend we're doing a cleanup in all the downtown parking lots, the public parking lots. We are working with a couple of other town organizations to do a children's chalk drawing, sidewalk drawing thing, where everybody gets their own 6x6 sidewalk square, and it's judged by different arts groups in town, who has the best one for the first graders, and so on and so forth, to get people out and in town, visiting the merchants in the restaurants, but still staying socially distant. And it's an activity that they can put on their calendar and come to, and hopefully it becomes an annual event. It's going to be a little bit late, but I'd like it to be like art in April sort of thing, and we involve different arts organizations every April, hopefully. We're also looking at doing a bingo that some of the other towns in the areas have done to draw people to different businesses in town. So we're going to be adding new and different little things like that. It's just we're staying away from the one big large one.
No, and I appreciate that, and thank you for kind of outlining some of the other stuff you're doing. I think I just saw some of the planters getting placed uptown. I guess that's from your group, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and actually, I called Steve Palermo today because I let him know that they're dumping trash in there, and that we're going to talk about that on Thursday. So.
Yeah, so that's not actually Public Works that handles that. They helped me place the pots out there, but we have someone that we contract using our streetscape funds to fill those planters. They have not been done yet because there's another frost expected. So I did reach out to him this afternoon when Mr. Palermo called me. And I said, can you just fill them with dirt right now, those new planters? So they're not getting filled with trash. So
right, and that was why I called Public Works, because I wanted to let them know that they were getting filled up. So but that goes back to our ordinance committee meeting that we're going to have on Thursday. Maybe we'll start to put a nail into that one. All right, so I don't have any more questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for letting me go a little bit off of the reservation, and WCI and Kathy and Liz and everybody. Thank you.
Councilor Tata next.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When Councilor Zandri was just speaking, it just kind of brought up a question. I noticed that the budget, it looks like it's $4,000 more than it was the previous year. But you had said that you had to revise it when the vote happened to take out or to not have Celebrate Wallingford. So did that not reduce your budget by removing that, or did those funds get moved into those other special events that you were just describing?
Okay, so Celebrate Wallingford actually has never officially been in our budget. I mean, it's been listed there, but it's pretty much a wash. Okay. bring in enough revenue from fees from the various vendors and sponsorship to be able to offset the expenses.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Counselor Shortell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Kathy. Long time no see. I guess I just want to react. I agree with Counselor Zandri. I wish we could have, these events. I love what he said about, even if it's next spring, like get it in this budget. I do agree with that. So, I mean, but I also want to compliment you and the board for making the decision you made on March 2nd or whenever you did it in early March. I think everyone's operating with the best information they have at the time they have it. And frankly, you look what's happening. There's an article today in the Washington Post about India. You see spikes in India. I mean, this thing is not going away, and I'm sorry, it's not over. Kids in schools are in cohorts. They're not just in school. They're in cohorts. And if there's an outbreak, if someone tests positive, they send the kids home. So it's, we're not out of the woods yet. And I love what we're doing. Connecticut seems to be in good shape. Let's hope it goes that way. But I think you and the board made a hard but correct decision in early March. And I just want to acknowledge that. So anyway, but thank you for everything you're doing. That's all I had.
Thanks.
If there are no more questions from the council, I will move on to the public. Mr. Comerford.
Yes, are you guys affiliated or do you subscribe still to Main Street USA? I don't have your budget in front of me.
Yes, we are a member of Main Street USA.
So do you subscribe to their philosophy still? I know that before that you were on board, and congratulations, by the way, that Liz Landau subscribed to that. But by me reading over their newsletters and so forth over the past couple decades, I'm just concerned that the town of Wallingford may have drifted away from that. And seeing that you're new on board with your budget, what are you doing to implement anything based upon your budget on the theory or the philosophy of Main Street USA?
So we are still working with the same philosophy that Main Street USA does. And their mission is pretty much the same mission we have as an organization. So as I said, I've been in this position for 6 months. I've been working 40, 50 hours a week trying to put together all these other smaller events, but at the same time, there's things that you may not see out there in the public. I'm working with all of the restaurants and the merchants to keep them abreast of all of the programs out there that can help them. I just sent one out yesterday, a new small business association restaurant fund that has been put in place with $28+ billion with a B that our restaurants can benefit from. I'm providing them with various classes. We've had a social media class. I have an email that's about to go out to them with some other class information that will help them with their marketing and their retail, their online retail. So we are doing a lot of those things. We're still running our facade program thanks to the funds that we get from the town. So we are still taking care of all those other things and then organizing all these other little additional events that we never had before. So when we get out of this pandemic, we will probably have more time to work on those other things, but those have to take a back seat right now.
And I appreciate that. Maybe I wasn't clear on my question. My question was what percentage of your budget is devoted toward the Main Street USA project in theory per se? Is it 5%, 10%? And that I'm only looking for a percentage, actually.
100%. Everything we do works for those same things that Main Street USA does.
Okay, thank you very much, and good
You're
luck.
welcome. Thanks.
All right, that's all I see for questions in the chat bar. Any questions from those who dialed in? All right, there appear to be none. Thank you both very much for your time and for your dedication to the downtown Wallingford.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Actually, before we let you go, we do have the WCI capital facade budget line. There's any counselors or members of the public have questions about that? All right, it appears not. So thank you for your time and thank you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Next up is the Senior Center. I think I saw Mr. Viola on.
I'm here.
Yes, you are. How are things at the Senior Center, Mr. Viola?
Well, things are looking up. And I just want to say that listening to Jane from the library, I kind of felt very similar. It's been a long, strange trip this past year, but I'm very grateful that we've been able to have the support of the town throughout all of this. And I'm especially grateful to the health department and all the entities in town that we were able to use our facility for vaccinations, especially for our older adult population. We have 95% of the 65 to 74 and about 93% of the 75 and up population here in town vaccinated, and that's thanks to the hard work and dedication of Steve Civitelli and Bernick and the health department. And we just we're so grateful to be able to do that, to provide that safety to our older adults. We did, similar to the library, we shut down last year, not knowing how long it was going to last. At the end of May, we laid off all our part-time and all our transportation staff. With the savings that we realized at that point, we returned some money to the town last fiscal year. And then during this fiscal year, with the people being laid off, although we've had reduced revenue, we've had substantially reduced expenses, disbursements. So we're able to take some of that money and reduce our requests to the town substantially this year. So you'll see that reflected in our budget request that was approved by the mayor. Initially, our thought was to once again return funds directly to the town, but in consultation with the mayor and the comptroller, they decided to directly reduce our request and allow us to retain those funds that we've saved this year to offset the reduction in our request, in case anybody was wondering. With that being said, I won't lengthen the meeting anymore. I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Viola. Questions for the Senior Center from the council? Questions for the Senior Center from the public? All right, let me just check the phones. Any questions for the Senior Center from those who have dialed in? Well, Mr. Viola, thank you for steadying that big ship during these interesting times for seniors. All right, let me just check the phones. Any questions for the Senior Center from those who have dialed in? Wow, I'm here twice.
Thank you, Chairman Cervoni. Thank you, counselors, for your continued support. We appreciate it, and have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks. Mr. Farrell, are you here regarding the historic program match?
I am.
You want to tell us about that at all, or just start with the questions?
Any questions the council has, I'm here to answer.
Questions from the council? Questions from the public? And anyone on the telephone with questions? Well, Mr. Farrell, thank you for checking in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up is the Center Street Cemetery. I do believe we have several representatives logged in.
Good evening. This is Bob Gross representing Center Street Cemetery. I don't know if anybody else is on the line. Because Mr. Beaumont had a PUC meeting tonight, so I don't know if he'll be here in time or not.
Looks like you're here by yourself.
That's fine.
All right. Do you want to talk to us about your budget or just dispense to the questions?
Well, I just want to thank the board from the Center Street Cemetery and the volunteers who, without the cemetery, would not run as well as it does. We appreciate the money from the town, but without the additional help of the volunteers and the time that Mr. Devaney and his crew put in, the cemetery would not run as well as it does and look as good as it does. That's endless hours that they put in down there. And the volunteers put in tremendous amount of time also. So with that, I'm looking to take any questions if anybody has anything.
I believe the first is from Councilor Shortell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Bob. Just really general question about last year's budget versus this year's budget. You were one of the impacted departments last year. I think we cut you by like $4,000, something like that. I think your budget was 85. I think you got 81 and change. And so I guess I want you to talk through the impact that had. And then I know I saw this year you're looking for $90,000. So I just wanted to get a sense of what's driving that request in general.
Good evening, Councilor Shortell. Thanks for the question. Last year, we had asked for, don't remember the amount, but I think it was $88,000 from the mayor. But in March of last year, the mayor let the Cemetery Association know that he was going to put us back to the previous year's amount of $85,000 because of the unknowns with COVID. Then what happened was the council cut an additional, I think it was $3,500, $2,500 from the budget. So it impacted us that we ran at a loss. We're running at a loss. Not the first year that we've run at a loss. We still have to maintain the 10 acres down there. We still have to maintain the monuments and the grounds. Costs of insurance and utilities still were there for us. Nothing stopped last year. So as everybody has said, that their budgets are up slightly because, you know, whether it's salaries or cost of living, et cetera, the Cemetery Association has those same things that are affecting its budget also. Cost of materials are going way up. And That's why that's what happened, and that's why we're looking for the 90 and the 90 doesn't cover our budget. We have so much volunteer work that goes on, and the extra hours that are put in by the staff that is paid to do what's needed down there. If you do an analysis of the hours that are needed to put in there, you can see that we're underfunded for what's done. You gotta remember, that's 10 acres of grass that's cut, many roads that are plowed during the winter, a lot of trees down there, a lot of leaves, and you can't leave the leaves till they all fall down. You have to, because it's an active cemetery. People don't want to find their graves buried in leaves, or can't find a monument because it's covered in leaves. So those are taken care of on a regular basis during that whole season. So the manpower is extensive. That's part of the reasons. Thank you. If you have any additional, I mean, we can go line by line, but that's some of the basic stuff. Plus, we've done additional things down there.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, just so you know, during this last year, we put in cameras. And so we now have, I think it's 10 or 12 cameras running operational, and we're looking to add more. So those are just some of the things that we're accomplishing that wasn't even in the budget. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else from the council? Questions from the public? Mr. Comerford.
Yeah, Bill Comerford, 5 Broadview Drive. Apparently, Mr. Beaumont is not available.
He's running another meeting.
Do we know what his role is there?
Excuse me, Mr. Beaumont is available. Mr. Beaumont just arrived from the other meeting. Excuse me for interrupting.
Oh, Mr. Beaumont, thank you for joining us.
So, Mr. Beaumont, what's your role at the Center Street Cemetery so I can direct my questions appropriately?
What is my role?
Please.
I'm vice president.
I understand, but I believe that there's 2 separate vice presidents. One is under grounds and one is under finance, correct?
I get involved with finance, and I get involved with anything else that needs to be done, as does Mr. Gross, as does Mr. Russo, for that matter, but yes.
Okay, but based upon your bylaws, are you the vice president of grounds or finance?
I would be first vice president, which falls under me, that there would be the finance end of it.
Okay, so I'm going to direct my questions for you right now. Under the membership, because under your income, under membership, are memberships, whether it's a membership or donations, are those tax deductible?
They should be tax deductible as 501c14, or yes, they should be.
So under 5013C14, is that what we said?
I believe that is correct.
And it's tax deductible. Now, I don't mean to interrupt you. So that falls under income, correct?
That would fall under income. That is correct.
Okay, so I see another line item under depreciations. Under total expenses, 3,700.
That's for the various, like any business, we depreciate our equipment. Depending on the nature of the equipment, depends on the term that we depreciate it for. That is, I mean, if it were buildings, it would be much longer. If it's equipment like zero turn mowers, that may be done over 10 or 12 years. It depends on what the equipment is as to how long it is depreciated. And that pretty much is, we are guided by that, by the number we have provided. That comes from our account.
Okay, so as far as your $3,700 depreciation, do you have any idea what constitutes depreciation? Is it just broad spectrum as to, you just mentioned mowers or something?
Yeah,
I don't have a depreciation schedule, so I'm just curious.
I don't
as
have
to-
a depreciation schedule in front of me either, Mr.
Bill,
Comerford.
Bill, we filed general accounting principles gap. And when the accountant does it, he has a list of the equipment, and that's what they do.
Yeah.
Okay, but my question was directed toward the finance person, Mr. Gross, but thank you. So, Mr. Beaumont, then, as far as the depreciation goes, you don't have the schedule in front of you, but a couple years ago, you depreciated the Center Street Cemetery gates in the building. You familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
You
I'm
are?
familiar with the fact that we had the gates put in. I'm certainly familiar that we had the building put up.
No. Let me go slow with this. The gates that are at the cemetery that's been brought up many times are owned by the town of Wallingford. But yet on your taxes, the 990s, you declare them as depreciable, as well as a building addition on the old building. I'm not talking about the new building, but the old building, you're also deducting your building as depreciable. Are you familiar with that?
That would be logical that it would be.
So let me ask you, why, if the town owns the gates, why is the Center Street Cemetery, which is a nonprofit, deducting or depreciating the gates on their taxes?
What does that have to do with the current budget?
Well, Mr. Cervoni, please don't interrupt my questioning, because it's clearly it does, because it's a depreciation.
No, it doesn't.
It's a depreciation value, which I don't have a schedule for.
Mr. Comerford, if it appears in the current budget, it's relevant tonight. If it doesn't appear in the current budget, it's not relevant tonight, unless you can tell me somehow, some way that it's related to the current budget.
Mr. Cervoni, you have your budget in front of you?
I have it next to me.
Okay, so if you look at it, it doesn't say anything other than depreciation. So I don't know what they've been depreciating, what they haven't, but clearly in the past, based upon their 990s, they have been depreciating a possession which you're in charge of, which is the cemetery gates. My question is are they still depreciating that, and is that effective on this budget? That's the question.
Well, that wasn't the question, but now that became relevant to this budget.
The answer is no.
No.
And when did that stop?
I don't even know what year was it even in the 990 bill?
As far as I know, it's always been in the 990.
You have to give me a specific date and I can take a look and tell you. But you know what? We can get back to you on that. Unfortunately, we don't have all that at our fingertips right now, Bill. And it's not really part of relevant to the budget for this year. So depreciation is not a cash asset. So it really doesn't affect our bottom line because we don't pay taxes.
Yeah,
So,
but Mr. Gross, you're depreciating things that aren't your possessions, including the building.
Well,
So
that's why I just asked you, Bill. That's why I just asked you. Please, you can get back to me. Let me know what years they are, and we can address it. I don't have that information in front of me, and there's nothing that Mr. Beaumont or I are going to be able to help you with tonight on that. Thank you.
Okay, so my next question before I go forward is, other people had questions about the Center Street Cemetery. I think they wrote into the town clerk. Do those get answered now or at the end of my questioning? Chairman Cervoni.
Honestly, I don't remember that other people had questions for the cemetery, but I'll check.
Don't worry.
I don't recall there being questions for the cemetery at the public hearing. As a matter of fact, I think, Mr. Comerford, you were the only person who spoke and you elected to defer your questions to tonight.
I believe somebody wrote into the town clerk and she's available, right? Is that not true?
Who's she?
I am not aware of any questions that were written into me.
Okay, because I've got one here that, well, all right, let me finish mine then, and then I'll go back to that. All right, so depreciation. Okay, so as far as your budget goes, I see that it says insurance and utilities. Is the Center Street Cemetery still using both buildings? And does this insurance and utilities cover both buildings?
I would have to take a look, just Bob Beaumont, I would have to take a look at the policy to be certain of that, and I do not have the policy in front of me at this point.
So, Mr. Beaumont, you're not aware if the Center Street Cemetery is utilizing both buildings?
I didn't say that. We certainly are using both buildings. I do not know what I specifically answered was with respect to the insurance as such, how that specifically reads. I do not have a copy of that in front of me. I do not have a copy of that in my house.
Okay, and that means the utilities are being paid for on both buildings?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm just concerned because I thought, just to the chairman, I thought that the original purpose of putting their new building up was that the old building was going to be vacated. So that's why I'm kind of concerned about that. Why are we allowing anybody to utilize a building that was supposed to be either vacated or whatever, but yet as a taxpayer that's funding 90-some odd % of their budget is paying for a building that was supposed to be abandoned?
I know nothing about the fact that the building was supposed to be abandoned. I have never heard that until you just mentioned that at this juncture. We are using the building for storage of of some of the equipment and some of the various tools that we have, among other things.
Mr. Gross, are you aware of that?
Repeat what, aware of what, Bill?
That the secondary building, the building that was never supposed to be utilized again since the new building.
Those are your words, Bill, not mine, but okay.
So the new building, the new building's erected.
Correct.
It was stated numerous times that the old building was going to be vacant and there was no purpose for it. The Center Street Cemetery wanted it to be demolished. Matter of fact, I think
Well, Bill, if that's in fact true, and I don't know if that is or not, it's now being used and utilized for the benefit of the cemetery, which is for the benefit of the town of Wallingford. So we are utilizing it, and it's for the betterment of the whole community, and that's what's happening right now with the building.
Okay,
and it has nothing to do with the budget, Bill, really.
Well, there's utilities involved, there's insurance involved, there's maintenance, there's upkeeps, and I think that Mr. Lappin actually was one that brought that up several years ago as far as that specific point, and I commend him for that. So what I'm saying is that back when the new building was sold to the taxpayers, I believe a gentleman named Mr. Lazarus said there was no purpose for the old building, and that everything would be housed in the new building, including trailers and all the equipment that was owned by the Center Street Cemetery. Okay.
So maybe I can wrap this up a little bit, at least this line of questioning, Mr. Comerford. So do I understand correctly that your concern is that there are utilities and the like being used, causing expenditures related to the old building? Is that correct?
Part of it, yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Gross, Mr. Beaumont, do you have any idea what portion of your budget relates to the
I can tell you right now, we would have no idea what percentage of the budget. It'd be minimal at best. And just remember to the council and to Mr. Comerford that the budget that we do receive from the town through a contract doesn't cover the amount of work that's done at the cemetery or the expenses that are at the cemetery. Through our volunteers and the extra hours that are put in, that makes up the difference. So it helps the town by having the building, it helps the cemetery operate, and so the building's there.
Okay, so my next question is going back to the original, the new building. Mr. Gross, you submitted your agreement with the town of Wallingford on your application for this grant or the money that's sent to you. You're familiar with that agreement, correct?
What does that have to do with the
I
budget?
do not know it by heart, Bill, but if you want to point something out.
And the reason why it does, Mr. Savoni, is he's the one that submitted it.
It's
He's the one who submitted what?
It's a public document, Bill.
No, Mr. Gross submitted as the reason why he wanted to go for an additional amount of money was based upon agreement for management services for the Center Street Cemetery, which I believe is made a 4 or 5 page document.
And I'm at a loss.
the one that-
I'm at a loss as to what that has to do with the new building and the budget.
Well, my question is, as far as your revenue goes, it appears to me that your potential caretaker down at the cemetery may have done additional work for other entities out of that building. Now, did that revenue that was generated, did that go to that individual specifically, or did it go to your bottom line as far as additional revenue?
You're making an assumption, Mr. Comerford, that we don't even know what, I don't know what you're talking about.
So you're not aware that potentially that person may have done some restoration or headstone repairs or anything of that nature for another entity?
There has been nothing of that nature done
We're
in
fully-
that facility,
we're fully
other
aware of
than
the work
that
that's been
which
done.
is for our own cemetery, period.
So no work was performed there?
No ands, no buts about it, Bill.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I appreciate that. Because, and I've got one other question based upon that.
Yes.
That is, okay, so to confirm, to the best of both your knowledges, there was been no repairs other than any kind of work that was done for the Center Street Cemetery.
I already answered that question.
No, I like the answer. Mr. Comerford, I'm aware that there was a stone that's not from our cemetery, that's a slate stone, that was damaged beyond repair, that was asked to be worked on by our sexton, if he could work on it at our cemetery, to try and repair it, so he could use it as an example to try and repair stones at our cemetery, meaning Center Street Cemetery, for the town, at a cost savings to the town of Wallingford to repair some of those old stones that were broken. So if that's what you're talking about, Mr. Comerford, yes.
Okay, so and thank you, Mr. Gross, for your candidness. So work was done on someone else's headstone at the Center Street.
No, it was a stone that's beyond repair, Mr. Comerford, that he wanted to repair. We can't take one of our stones and damage it. It was a test trial stone that we're aware of.
And where did this come from?
I don't know where it came from.
Okay, because
Mr. Gross, if I understand you correctly, the stone was essentially garbage.
That's exactly, it was run over, it was a slate stone run over by a vehicle, unfortunately, and it was in a lot of pieces. It was not salvageable, or it was salvageable, but it's going to look very poor repair, and he asked if he could work on it because it helps Center Street, because we have the same type of stone, and it's newer than that. I mean, we have older stones than that type of stone, but stones go through different generations of the kind of stones that, you know, are used in cemeteries. And for that particular period of time, this type of stone is used, and we have those stones. Center Street Cemetery has those stones. And so it was being worked on to see if he could repair it and get experience on it.
For the benefit of the Wallingford Center
It has
Street.
nothing to do with the budget. It's a cost savings to the town of Wallingford in the long run.
so, and I appreciate that. Do you know what type of stone it was? I'm curious.
He said it was slate.
It was slate. So apparently this you said Devaney didn't have experience fixing slate, so it was a learning experience for him. Is that what I'm to believe?
Bill, we've already discussed it.
I would say it was
so-
advanced learning because he has done some.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, he just repaired a slate stone here within the last 3 to 4 weeks, which fortunately, which had been previously repaired by somebody else.
Okay, so last time I had you guys on deck to answer some questions, we talked about a merit bonus. And my question was, based upon the gift that the town of Wallingford is giving the Center Street Cemetery of 90 grand or whatever the number is, I asked about a merit bonus, specifically to Mr. Gross. And the question back, I think it was 2 years ago, was if he was aware of any type of merit bonus, and if a merit bonus was awarded, is that person, we talked about it, and I think he stated it was Mr. Devaney. And the question is was he ever entitled to any type of merit bonus? And if so, was any of that money from the taxpayers of the town of Wallingford given as any part of the merit bonus?
Bill,
So, Mr.
that,
Gross,
I have to say,
we're talking about something that's not in our budget right now.
thank you.
So I don't know, it's something that I wouldn't have information on here. So it's not in our budget.
but the question is that if
The question's irrelevant as you phrased it, Mr. Comerford.
the relevance of it is if there's additional, if you guys had an extra 30 grand in your budget, is it plausible that that sexton down there is able to receive any type of bonus, merit bonus, based upon their performance?
Mr.
Yes or no?
Comerford, Mr. Comerford, we have a contract with the town. Most years we run in the red. I think that we normally take that money and, like the last few years, have put it towards cameras. Could we do that? We could, it's in the budget. We could do, I think the Cemetery Association legally can pay its employees to do work. And if somebody was down there doing extra work for us, could we compensate them for that work? Yes, because that's the contract we have for the town. As long as work's being done for the town of Wallingford, can we compensate people appropriately? The answer would be yes.
No, I understand that, but the point is that that same person is able to accept a financial bonus. For example, 10 grand, 20 grand, whatever you guys determine, based upon my tax money. If there's an additional fluff that's at the end of your fiscal year, that person is entitled to a bonus, yes or no, with my taxpayers' money.
Again, Bill, hypothetical, it's not in the budget. Don't know what, we can compensate anybody that comes in there and does work. And sometimes we have to hire outside people that we don't know about at a loss to the cemetery. That happens. What you're asking is hypothetical, can't answer.
Okay, and the question that I submitted to Chairman Cervoni as well as yourself was, this particular individual stated at a town council meeting that he had a high of 61 burials. So I was looking to obtain what year that actually took place, because the reason why it is based upon the budget information is I wanted to compare the high of that year, that specific year of 61 burials, with any other year that they had, and what the Center Street Cemetery was able to achieve more so than a lower year of, say, 5. So I was looking for that specific year.
That's like asking Public Works how many storms they budget for.
No, a specific person came and said he had a high of 61 graves. So that's the equivalent, Chairman Cervoni, of saying, and back when I used to plow snow in 1995, we had 105 inches, and it was documented by the Weather Society. So what I'm saying is the individual stated that he had a high of 61 graves. I want to know specifically what year that was. And Chairman Cervoni, Mr. Shortell asked virtually the same question last year about 2 separate years. So my question again is, what year, please, was the high of 61 graves?
Mr. Comerford, you're saying you heard it being said, so you must have an audio recording of it.
It was a town council meeting. It was a town council meeting.
I don't understand that. Bill, because we got the question in advance, I went back and looked at the years. I cannot find a year of 61, so you would have to try and pinpoint it more specifically. I do not see a year of 61. Was that accumulation of a few years? I don't know. I don't know what exactly was said, Bill, but I can tell you that we don't have 61.
And how far back did you go, Mr. Gross?
You don't have to answer that.
Okay.
So it never happened.
You know what? Ask a question about this budget.
Okay, as far as your budget goes, it says cemetery supplies, 9,000.
Okay.
You have your budget in front of you?
Yeah, I don't have the breakdown of the budget. If you were so kind to have asked this in advance, I could have gotten a breakdown of what those are, but I don't have it in front of me. I just have the budget.
So I have no idea what cemetery supplies are.
Oh, I have an idea what cemetery supplies are, but I can't break it down for you, Bill.
Cemetery supplies, among other things, can be things that are used to go ahead, repair gravestones. It can be oil. It can, for the various, oil or gas or diesel, as the case may be, for the various pieces of equipment. There are a myriad of things that it can be, Bill.
So oil and stuff wouldn't fall under maintenance expenses? The line right below that?
Some of that goes into maintenance, and some of it goes into cemetery supplies. Certainly, anything to do with repairing gravestones, monuments, if you will, would come out of there.
But this is your budget, but you have no clue what it is. You're intermingling.
We did, Bill, when we went over the budget, we sat down, as any group would do, and we went over the budget. We had line, we knew there are many parts to make up that line, but I don't have it in front of me because I would have a million pieces of paper unless, like you asked this question specifically about how many graves were dug. I have the answers here because you asked in advance. I cannot give you this answer, and I know Mr. Beaumont can't give you this answer because, how do we know what questions are going to be asked tonight, Bill? There's a lot of things that make up the budget. So sorry.
In all your prior years, the Center Street Cemetery has always given the town of Wallingford a more detailed budget, which clearly, in my opinion, itemized a lot of these things that I'm bringing question to because they supplied it. Now this is the first year out of, this is the third year. Two of them were missing, which you guys refused to do. So now you come up with this convoluted one where it says cemetery supplies, but you don't even know what it encompasses. We go under maintenance, you don't know what it encompasses. So let's go under.
No, please don't, Bill, please don't say we don't. No, just because you're saying things that are incorrect. Don't say we don't know what it entails. We do. As I explained to you, a group of us got together. Mr. Beaumont led the finance committee and then sat down with me and a few others that we went over what the budget, what makes up these lines, and approved and cut and moved things around that we needed to. We look at things historically because you never know what's going to happen at a cemetery. You never know what the demand's going to be, and you don't know what vandalism is going to be, etc. So, and this is historical averages, and that's what we do. Thank you.
So again, I don't want to belabor this, but cemetery supplies, you can't give me an definitive answer as to what it is. So let's go to outside services, conservation, $5,000. What is that?
That would be if we were to go outside and have somebody repair monuments. There may be certain monuments that need repair that maybe Mr. Devaney would rather not get involved with. When I say that, they may be different stone, different type of stone than what he's ever dealt with. And as a result thereof, we might go out. Now, we used to go out all the time until a comparatively few years ago. Probably in the last half dozen or so years, Mr. Devaney has done most all of the restoration work. There are some things that if they are outside of what he feels is his ability to go ahead and do them in a manner that would be representative of the cemetery, then we would go outside, we would get a contractor to go ahead and do it. That's why that is in there.
So who makes that decision about somebody's ability based upon this conservation number?
Bill, that has nothing to do with the budget, Bill.
It says right there, conservation, $5,000.
Right, I know. Right. It's a management decision, Bill.
So you just arbitrarily throw $5,000 out there, but there's nothing budget. It's not dedicated to any particular project.
It will be, in the course of a year, some of the brownstones or some of the obliques will need some work. You have a 300-something-year-old cemetery.
So the answer is yes. You're just taking $5,000. You're asking me to give you $5,000 as well as the rest of the tax, but you have no idea where you're going to use it. There's nothing dedicated to the $5,000. Is that correct?
It's a matter of what is the priority that comes to the fore, and the priorities can change. If you're familiar with any kind of budgeting, Bill, you should be aware of the fact that during the course of a given fiscal year, any entity, be it a business, be it a private business, be it a municipal department, be it a 501c14 or whatever it happens to be, things happen along the way that are not anticipated. As a result thereof, the different line items, amounts end up changing. What is anticipated at the beginning of the budget year may not end up being what is there or what it is utilized for throughout the course of the year. That is reality. That is true in any business that you're going to be in, that anybody is going to be involved with.
Mr. Comerford, add on that, that's why you'll see the town of Wallingford come back and transfer money between departments. What'll happen with the cemetery is, unfortunately, with vandalism situation where there's great stones that are damaged, we might have to go out for 7,000. We don't know. We don't know what next year is going to bring, or are we going to have to transfer it for another expense that we unforeseen at the beginning of the year? You don't know. And that's to Mr. Beaumont's point. He was 100% correct. But we're not a public agency. So what happens is we'll have transfers. The finance committee will make a motion to move money from one department to another, and it happens.
But I'm confused because all in the past, insurance claims have been put in for vandalism. Am I not right?
What?
Insurance claims.
Bill, not for vandalism claims for what?
For headstone repair.
Not in our budget this year or last year or the year before, not as long as I've been here, Bill. So I don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't have anything to do with this year's budget.
You know what? That seems like the generic answer is.
No, but Bill, it's simple. If we have a vandalism, how would we know we're going to have a vandalism that's going to be $100,000 worth of damage? And if we were to have a case like that, yes, I assume that we would go to the insurance department, our insurance carrier, and say we have that. If we have a small vandalism, unfortunately, we will fix that in-house or have to go out to bid for something. But we have no way of knowing what vandalism is going to be the following year. Or because some of these stones are so old, they just fall apart.
But
they just break.
The question again, and I don't want to belabor, and I appreciate Chairman Ciavone let me indulging on this, but it's all about conservation. So conservation usually means that there's a conservation plan. So with the conservation plan, I would say, okay, our plan is we're going to fix this one, and we're going to do this one and that one, and here's our bid. And our bid is at $4,500. There's a 5% or 10% fudge factor, one way or another, and that's what the plan is. On this conservation, from what I'm hearing, is it's just a number that's just thrown out there.
No, it's not. Looking at the cemetery, you can have an idea. We can determine what stones are breaking down, what stones are going to need the work, and based on historical or previous experience, know approximately what they're going to cost. And so they're budgeted for. Now, if something comes up, we don't fix it that year and we have to go to the next year. And if it becomes inevitable that we have to fix it right then and there, then we have to move money from a different department to pay for that stone to be repaired. And that's what happens, Bill.
So again, without belaboring, there's nothing targeted for the $5,000, nothing specific. If I went down to the cemetery today and I said, show me where the $5,000 is going, you couldn't point it to me.
We can give you, Bill.
You can give me an idea. You can give me an idea. Well, we'd like to do this. We'd like to do that.
Please, both of you stop. You know what, Mr. Comerford, you might not like the answer to the question they gave you, but they gave you an answer to the question. And now you're arguing with them.
Okay, I'm sorry, Chairman Sport. So my next work under outside services, because it says cemetery work 8,000. what does that encompass?
Let me take a look.
Mr. Beaumont?
Putting my glasses on, if you don't mind.
Bill, that could be anything, and Mr. Beaumont's looking, but if I remember part of it, and don't hold me to it, Bill, again, if you had asked some of these questions in advance, maybe we could have had a more detailed answer. But it's not just the stones, Bill. There's damage to the property down there. There's removal of stuff. There is equipment that we need. These are outside services that we can hire out for if need be.
Mr. Beaumont?
I think that's enough, Bill. I think we gave you detailed enough.
Well, he's the financial person. It says outside services, cemetery work. What falls within that parameter?
I hope everybody understands, we have a budget with we have a contract with the town of Wallingford, meaning Center Street Cemetery Association. It's to perform the maintenance of the cemetery of the town of Wallingford. It's a historic cemetery on approximately 10 acres of land with stones dating back to the 17th century. Yeah, 1600s to 17th century. So yeah, the stones are from the 1600s, but 17th century up till today's date. And I think that everybody would agree, and they don't have to, of course, that the Cemetery Association for the if we can get the $90,000 this year, in the past, for the amount of money that the cemetery gets from the town of Wallingford, does a fantastic job managing the money for the town of Wallingford and keeping the cemetery in the shape that the town of Wallingford should be proud of. And if you walk through the cemetery, people should be happy to see the grounds the way they are and the care that's taken of that cemetery.
Great. Mr. Beaumont, can you answer the question, please?
I just did. We get a budget.
Oh, Mr. Beaumont, please, no, cemetery work, $8 grand. What is that?
I think we've answered it, Mr. Beaumont.
Is that basic, huh?
I think we've answered it.
Mr. Gross has given you an answer on that.
He gave me a lecture about nothing. Where does the $8 grand go? It's not itemized. What is that? He gave me a speech about how they do this and how they do that. Where's the 8,000 going? Just a minute ago, I asked about 5,000. Nobody knew. Now I'm at 8,000. Nobody knows. So, Mr. Beaumont, you're the financial person. As you already indicated, where's the 8,000 going? The cemetery work, $8 grand. Where's it going?
It's going to work to maintain the cemetery. I think, Bill, that I just said, to keep it in the condition that the cemetery is. It doesn't just happen by just putting a wand over it and saying, "Oh, look at how nice the cemetery looks." There's a lot of materials and supplies. Bill, you're fully aware of what it takes to keep piece of property maintained.
Please, I don't want to waste anybody's time, Chairman Savoni. I appreciate this long, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they have an answer for the last two $12,000 or $13,000. Mr. Beaumont, do you not have an answer? I don't mean to be interrupted by Mr. Gross. He's the president. You're the financial person. Do you have an answer? Yes or no? Cemetery work. Can you identify where the money goes?
I'll give you an idea what some of the cemetery work is.
Mr. Gross, I'm asking Mr. Beaumont, your financial person, the person in charge of the finances, where is the $8 grand going?
You know what, Mr. Comerford, you don't get to choose who answers your question.
I'm going to answer your question for you, Bill. I think we've answered it. And if you go down there and see what's on the property down there and the things that we've done over the last few years that have been material items that are in that property right now, Bill, that I mentioned earlier in the conversation, that takes money, and that's what we use it for. Thank you.
Okay, my next question is under depreciation. It says new equipment. You see that, Mr. Beaumont?
Excuse me?
16,000, new equipment.
The columbarium he's talking about.
That's not new equipment. If you're talking $16,000, that would be going toward a columbarium.
Okay, can you explain that to me?
Excuse me?
Can you explain that to me, please?
A columbarium, depending on the number of niches, it depends, basically cremains are put in there. Many cemeteries have them. St. John's has one. In Memoriam has one. There is a demand for them. Many times cremains are just buried in the ground, and that's fine. And when I say they're buried in the ground, they may be buried in a vault or in an urn in the ground. There are people who like the idea of having a columbarium, and those cremains then would be put into the columbarium. It's something that is not at all unusual, and that's what we're looking to do, is to go ahead and put one in, and we would market it accordingly with the idea of providing more income to the cemetery.
Okay, so and just for curiosity, were there bids put out for this thing? 16 grand, is that the total cumulative sum of the project?
My hearing may be off, Bill. I didn't quite catch what did you ask if that was, the 16,000 was the whole amount?
Yes.
Based on what we see today, it would appear that it should be in that range, yes. Based on my experience from having been involved with putting in a columbarium for a cemetery a number of years ago.
All right, and Chairman Cerrone, are you aware of this?
I am now.
But prior to this, you weren't.
Actually, I had some idea.
So was it brought up to your attention?
Why are you asking me this question?
Because based upon the information that they submitted to you back against their agreement, it says, no permanent alteration, number 11, of the cemetery or Prince Street property shall be made by the association without town approval. So they're coming to you asking for 16 grand, but they need town council approval before anything can get done.
It's
So
not done.
You're potentially floating them in their budget $16,000, but they would have to get town council approval to even put the thing up and erect it. And I also believe that there's a strong likelihood that they would have to get permission from the state of Connecticut. So
Mr. Comerford,
money, in my opinion,
let's put an end to this now. Bill, take a look at the next line down. You see the next line down, Bill? What does it say? 121,000.
including
Right, and the depreciation's only 3,700. So take that out, Bill. 117,000. Let's round it down. We're asking for 90.
That $16,000. That $16,000 is not coming from the town.
You're asking for 16 grand from the town.
We
Bill,
are not.
For 90, we're not.
Coming. The source of that 16,000 has nothing to do with the town of Wallingford. It has everything to do with the fact that we had the good fortune a number of years ago to be given a bequest by an individual in town. Excuse me, we received in total about $136,000, and we are allowed to spend 90% of any income that is generated from that. There is accumulated income in there that will more than cover what we need for the columbarium.
But again, you still need permission from the town council, correct?
We need permission, Bill. We haven't even gone that far yet. This is a budget. The budget was drawn up. We sent it to the mayor months ago. We hope to do it this year, but things could change. This is something we're asking for. It's more than the budget. It's something that the Cemetery Association would pay for. Will it be done by next year? Can't guarantee it, Mr. Comerford. We would like to see it done. And yes, we will get all the permits and all the permissions before it's done.
Okay, so, and I have one final question. I have relatives that are buried down at the Center Street Cemetery. And it appears to me that there's been swaths of grass that have been killed by herbicide, maybe over herbicide usage. And I'm assuming that falls under one of your line items under cemetery supplies or maintenance expenses and supplies. And for freedom of information, I got a copy of the material that you guys use, which is called Roundup Pro. You guys aware of that usage down there? And are you still using that? And does this fall under your budget line item? And what item does that fall under? Cemetery supplies or maintenance expenses?
Don't know what it falls under, Bill. Are we aware of it? Yes, I'm fully aware that we use Roundup down there. It's used normally around the wall, but it has
But not around the headstone.
Not as an ongoing thing. No, Bill.
So indulge me. How do I find out what's being used around my relatives' headstones? Because I did some search on Roundup, and it says you're specifically not supposed to do it. And there was reports that were paid by the taxpayers of the town of Wallingford for the restoration work by MCC, who is a person that, again, was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to restore headstones on there. And in my opinion, it stated don't use Roundup in the reports, but yet it appears by through.
Okay, Mr. Comerford,
we do buy Roundup. It is in the budget. It is sprayed around the wall. I don't know what else to tell you.
But not around the headstones.
It has nothing to do with the budget, Bill. And grass dies, and the headstones. Grass does die around headstones. Grass dies where bodies are buried years later. The concrete, you know this. You're familiar with these types of things. There are brownouts. The heat from the stone, from the sun hitting it, if it hits it, kills the grass around it because it gets too hot. You're aware of these types of things, Bill. But it has nothing to do with the budget.
Oh, okay. Well, it does, because that would be a line item. Roundup is expensive, and based upon how much usage is there, number one. And number two, again, I just want to confirm, because I'm concerned about my relatives' headstones on there, and the kill and the stone actually absorbing into the material being absorbed through the stone. So, to the best of your knowledge, they're not being.
If you have a concern about the maintenance of the cemetery, please contact us. This has nothing to do with the budget, and we're more than happy to take a look into it. Give us the stones that you have in question. We're more than happy to take a look at them for you. Thank you.
Okay, and my final question is: a couple years ago, I asked about
Your last question was
penetrating
supposed
radar.
to be your final question.
I'm sorry, I lied. I should be a politician like you, Mr. Cervoni. So.
You know what?
Years ago,
Mr. Comerford, you had 40 minutes and you've exceeded the timeline I typically would have allowed anybody, and you're done. You're not going to be rude to me and expect to continue in this meeting. Do you understand that?
Mr. Cervoni, unfortunately, there's paperwork that documents through a deposition that you were part of, in my opinion, a group
What does
that
this have to do with the
favored a
budget?
lawsuit against me. It completely does, because you stifle me, you're biased, and you always shut me down, whether it's here or whether it's a town council meeting. And there's been numerous amount of times that I've got a lot of questions to ask, but yet you still stifle me. So you know what?
I've
You can do
given
whatever
you
you want.
40 minutes. I've given you 40 minutes and somebody else is waiting to ask questions.
I don't care if it takes an hour and 40 minutes. It's my money. I'm the one that pays the bill. And if I don't have the courtesy, whether it's from you or Laughing or anybody else that's in charge, then you shouldn't be up there. Because you know what? These are questions that you guys should be asking and not me, but yet you choose to stifle me. So no matter when and where it happens, you still do. Whether it's the 61 graves, the headstones, ground penetrating radar, the sexton reports, whatever
Wrap
it
it
is,
up, Mr.
you choose
Comerford.
to do it.
Mr. Comerford, wrap it up. This is not a budget question. Are you done?
Yes.
I'm going to let Susan Heisenka ask her question, and then I'll come back with my final. Thank you.
Ms. Heisenga, apparently Mr. Comerford is yielding to you, and my apologies. I don't know what happened to the questions you emailed.
Yeah, that process needs to be reviewed. I believe it's Susan Heisinger, 36 Surrey Drive. I submitted 7 days ago questions related to government TV, Center Street Cemetery, and general questions to an email. Maybe I had it wrong. Let me just look and see what email I used to be sure. It went to townclerk@wallingfordct.gov. So that was my attempt to be in the budget process. With respect to the Center Street Cemetery, again, I don't know if it's a user error or not, but I can't seem to find the website. I don't have a budget in front of me. I don't know if they're budgeting for a website, but is there a website, and is there a budget for the website? Is somebody maintaining it, paying for the domain name and so forth?
First, the town does not pay for the website, pays nothing. It's all volunteers, and it's hosted by a volunteer. Unfortunately, the website, the host went down, and we are very diligently trying to get it back up, because we will duplicate it, but we'd rather not have to duplicate all that material that was on there. So we're hoping, instead of trying to start a new website, we're hoping to get that website back and running. But
So it's been over a year. So when did it? No, I tried a year ago, and then I tried about 6 months ago, and then I tried more recently. So has it been going in and out, or you don't know?
Just went down just recently. I can't tell you the exact date, but it's within the last 8 weeks.
I tried before. I nearly died with COVID, and it was not up. That was on Halloween. So it's been a while. It's not just 8 weeks. So I appreciate the fact that volunteers are looking into that, and you're saying it's not funded. The other thing that came up in the last budget hearing in 2020, there was reference, and apparently Mr. Comerford's involved with this. It said there's an ongoing lawsuit for over a couple of years, and lawsuits cost money. So are any taxpayer dollars going to cover attorney fees or anything of that nature, or is that all being handled under this bequest fund?
Now, besides that, we've had to absorb that money. Unfortunately, it's to the tune of over $15,000 over a 3-year period that that Mr. Comerford ended up, it was the other party to this, but it did cost us over $15,000. We are still asking for the same amount of money. Back a few years ago, before the lawsuit started, we were getting $81,000 and change to run the cemetery. This will be the 5th budget passed, and we're asking for $90,000. So it's approximately a 2% per year increase, which cost of living and so forth. We do not feel that's we know it's not enough to run the cemetery for us, but we get so many volunteers, but it's keeping in line and keeping the town's put into the budget as to the cemetery as minimal as possible.
There's been a lot of reference to a lot of volunteers, and I'm literally across the street on a daily basis for several hours, except for that 2-month period where I was nowhere. I don't see all this activity. I'm kind of curious about it, but I will try to be more observant. Apparently there's a lot going on that I never see. But you are very proud of whatever it is. I do get a Google. There's a question here. I do get a Google alert on various things in Wallingford. And one alert came to my attention, which I posted publicly about in Wellfleet, Massachusetts. It has nothing to do with Mr. Comerford. I get these Google alerts. I asked this question, and it appears that there might be a need for training of the caretakers regarding gravestone restoration. Is there anything in the budget to go to like a seminar or go to get any training of any kind regarding what is considered standards related to gravestone restoration for the volunteers? Is that in the budget?
Whatever we have, whenever there's a need for something, we do have money that's budgeted for training. And then there's legal stuff that we need to know, follow up on the laws of Connecticut, because things change with cemetery associations by the state statutes. And we do provide training if needed.
Okay. So training is a consideration when you need it. That's what I wanted to understand. Thank you. I think those are the key things, the website, the training, and the who's paying for lawsuits that are going on forever. Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask the questions publicly.
Certainly.
Thank you.
We'll try and figure out what happened to your email.
Thank you.
Mr. Comerford.
Thank you, Chairman Cervoni. I just want to give you guys an overview real quick, a synopsis, if you will. The membership Mr. Beaumont said was tax deductible. There was an IRS letter stated to them that their deductions and their membership is not deductible, and that they needed to inform all of their whoever it is within that envelope that it is not deductible. The use of the building, they stated over years, once the new building was put, everything that they owned would be encapsulated in the new building. They do not need the old building under any circumstance, which would also reduce the town's, what's the word I'm looking for? Exposure for liability, insurance, utilities, vandalism, so forth. Depreciation, they've been depreciating the gates that the town owns and the old building that the town owns for decades. The stone repair was done for, in my opinion, by an outside entity, in this case, the sexton at the 60 Prince Street, well documented by photographs that person sent up to Wellfleet. Merit bonuses, as Mr. Gross stated, that they have the right to give anything that they want once they get the funds, kind of like Board of Education. So whether it's $2 grand, $5 grand, $1 grand, whatever. And 61 barrels doesn't exist, but they told us that at a town council meeting. The point being is that this organization is riddled with questions. And when I bring it up based upon their own budget, they can't even answer it. 5 grand, 8 grand, 16 grand, and yet we still keep funneling money. And at the end of the day, and I said this before, and it's a fact, the former president, decades and decades and decades and decades ago, says that the cemetery is full. So on behalf of myself and several other people, we're still in radar is done. I'd like Mr. Savoni, I'm making a public announcement. I'd like Mr. Savoni to please put it on the agenda for the town council to bring up. Does the town council support ground penetrating radar free from the state of Connecticut? At least we can get the support from the town council so we can all put the thing to bed. Thank you.
Mr. Gross, Mr. Beaumont, thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for your dedication to the cemetery.
Thank you, council, for your support. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Certainly do. Thank you.
All right, on to public celebrations. Ms. Gallagher. You're muted. Now you're unmuted, but your audio is not working.
This is Joan Parisi. I'm here as the treasurer also.
Okay. Thank you, Joan. We're trying to get Ms. Gallagher to her audio to work. Let me see what happens if I try to unmute you. Can't hear you. Sorry.
Did you get Roz?
She's on the meeting. Her camera was working. She was unmuted, but her audio wasn't working. So I think she's trying to log back in.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Gallagher, I do see that you're logged in, and you appear to be unmuted. All right, well, let's just find out. Are there any counselors who do have questions for public celebrations? There appear to be none. Members of the public who have questions for public celebrations? Oh, hang on a second. You must be caller number 5, Roz. Hang on.
Can you hear me, Vinny?
Yeah, you now I've got your call.
I'm so sorry.
Quite all right.
I'm so sorry. Well, I just wanted to let you know. Muted. That last year we had to cancel most of our events because of COVID. We were able to reinvent the wheel, so to say, and came up with our car caravan for Halloween, which we held at Sheehan High School. And in place of the traditional Seasons of Celebration event, we transitioned to our Holiday of Lights event. Our attendance was over 300 cars for Halloween, over 900 cars for Holiday of Lights. We distributed approximately 800 bags of goodies to the children for Halloween, twice that amount for Holiday Lights. I created our budget, which will allow us to either go back to our traditional style of events, or if need be, continue with our revised format. And that'll all be based on the COVID situation. And I'm sorry that somehow I can't get the audio. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. If you could turn down the speakers on your device, maybe on your phone, try that.
Unmuted. Can you hear me now, Vinny?
Let's just see if your computer audio is working. Hang on. All right, try that. Yeah, no.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Try and turn down the volume on your iPad or whatever that is that you're.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Because I'm so good at this. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, thank you for your work. And thank you for suffering through the technology with us.
Well, I'm a dinosaur.
No. So I don't see questions from the council. I don't see questions from the public. I'm just going to unmute the phones. Anybody on the telephone have questions for public celebrations? It appears not. So, Roz,
Okay.
thank you for your service. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, everybody.
Vinny?
Again, my apology.
Yes.
Chairman,
Yes.
Hi, it's Kathy from Wallingford Center. I just wanted to say that it was fabulous that we were able to partner with public celebrations in Park and Rec on the holiday activities at Christmas time. And I think that everyone in town saw that what we did was great. It was a great partnership to make things happen so that the children could still see Santa. Thanks.
Thanks, dear.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too, Vinny.
Thanks. All right, next up is Columbus House. Do we have representatives of Columbus House online? I don't see anybody volunteering to take questions, but are there questions? If there are questions from the council, then perhaps we can get them to show up at another meeting. All right, well, next up is SCOW, or the Spanish Community of Wallingford. I know we have representatives online for that.
Hi, good evening. It's Adriana Rodriguez, Executive Director, the Spanish Community of Wallingford. And I'm here with my board chairman, Jeffrey Necchio.
Hi, Benny. Good evening to both of you. Thank you for logging on. Do you have anything to present before we go to questions?
Definitely. I just wanted to first thank everyone for your continued support, but also I just wanted to give a big shout out to the Wallingford Health Department, Town of Wallingford, because last week we hosted our first vaccination clinic and we're able to administer over 100 vaccines to the Hispanic community, and that was very exciting and everyone was very pleased to have that. So I just wanted to kind of thank everyone for that.
Terrific. Questions for SCOW? Don't everybody type in the chat bar at once. All right, nothing from the council, anyone from the public? And anyone on the telephone with questions for SCOW? All right. Well, Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for your work and service to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on to Wallingford 2021, which I think is turning into 2022. Ms. Mansfield, I can see you. I can't yet hear you.
I'm going to test my mic. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Excellent. Good evening, Chairman and council folks and public.
Do you have anything to tell us aside from the fact that we're not doing this year?
Yes, we are rescheduled for June 2022. We thank all the volunteers, the council, and the town of Wallingford. We do not have any incremental requests for funding as last year, but at the chairman's discretion, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the planning around this uncertain time.
Questions from the council? Questions from the public? There's nothing new in the chat bar. I will go to the phones. And questions from anyone on the telephone? There being none, I guess some of us will see you next year.
God willing, everybody stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is all the business on our agenda tonight. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop the meeting recording and adjourn the meeting.
This conference is no longer being recorded.